Oh, that's not what we want at all, is it? Good morning. Having a few technical difficulties this morning. I turned on the computer this morning, no sound. That was not a good start. And apparently, my system tells me that I'm actually broadcasting to Instagram. I've just fired up Instagram, can't see it. I have no idea what's going on over there. But good morning, one and all. Hope you're all fit and well. Let me very quickly go back through this. 9:14 this morning. Dan Cullum's here saying good morning to all you filthy animals. Good morning, Dan. I've not seen him since, but I'm fairly sure he'll be along at some point. Gary Muirhead. Morning, Gary, says good morning, guys. Andy Thornton, a show regular these days. Thank you for joining us again, Andy. Much appreciated. I'm fairly sure I've saw, yeah, there we are. Modular Jim Turner is in the house as well. I need to press his button, don't I? Speaking of pressing buttons, I will make a note to myself. I think it's about time that we gave Andy Thornton his own button on my Stream Deck. Save me a bit of time in the morning. How are we doing, everybody? Hope you're all fit and well. I want to show you a thing before we get started. Let me see if I can fire it up. There we are. Let me do that, and let me do that. There you are. I'm showing it to you for two reasons. Obviously, it is a news story and it's a worthwhile news story, but it also kind of plays into my morning monologue today, which talked about the way in which the UK demolition and construction workforce is treated. And I think this is a prime example. Just in case you can't read it, if you're watching this on a very small screen, this is a headline from today's Construction Inquiry, which says groundworks boss wins payout over a gagging order. A groundworks boss has been awarded more than £500,000 in damages after a house builder tried to silence him after he raised concerns about asbestos on site. Martin McGowan took legal action against Scottish house builder Springfield Properties. The court session heard that McGowan had worked as a subcontractor for Springfield, employing up to 70 people on their projects. Both sides fell out in 2016 when McGowan raised concerns about asbestos and a lack of PPE for his staff on a number of sites. Basically, the guy has raised the alarm bells about all things related to asbestos, and the employer there, or the house builder, has tried to silence him. Now, there was a couple of things that struck me about that. The first is, obviously, that runs counter to industry training. I don't know if we actually have a slogan for it. I don't know if it's everywhere across the country, but if you see something suspicious on a train, see it, say it, sorted. I think that's what they say. I can't be absolutely sure, but I think that's fairly sure that's what they say. We are trained within this industry. If you spot anything that you believe might be asbestos and is therefore a danger to to yourself or to your fellow workers, your job is to report it. More than that, though, it goes against human instinct, doesn't it? If you spot asbestos, let's be honest, asbestos is a major issue. We're talking about potential carcinogen here. Nobody wants to die as a result of exposure to it. Human instinct says self-preservation. I don't want to go anywhere near that. That's potentially deadly. But also, it goes against the human instinct to say to your fellow workers, lads, asbestos. Let's go and do something else while somebody comes along and sorts this. And the fact that a house builder has put a gagging order on somebody for raising that very concern surely goes against pretty much everything that we're supposed to do. All of which, as I say, kind of plays into our morning monologue for today, which will be along forthwith. I'm going to say a very quick good morning to Alex Latham, who has just joined us. Morning, Alex. That's another person that probably needs their own button. Actually, I say that Alex has got his own button on the Stream Deck. For those of you who don't know, I'll very quickly, that's what a Stream Deck looks like. And if you can see the letters on there, each of those represents one of our regular viewers. There's pages of those, so that when those people arrive in the chat, I can just press a button and it welcomes them to the show. Yeah, that's all part of the behind the scenes toolkit. And speaking of people that are on our toolkit, there you are. There's another one. The Sprocket Man himself, Mr. Ken Hatcher, has just arrived. Sorry, my Stream Deck has just fallen over. So let's welcome Ken in the traditional manner. There you are. Good morning, Ken, Mr. Sprocket Man himself. Morning, Ken. How's the weather? Well, I can tell you the weather looks like that. It's kind of Welsh. Looks kind of Welsh. And Chris Ford, another member of the Stream Deck team. That's the wrong button. Let's have a look. Let's press That one. There we are. And that's good morning to Chris Ford, who's just said morning, gang. Yeah, good morning. I think we're all pretty much present and correct. So without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show, as soon as I can find the right button, get this show on the road. Chris Ford just says, I've always pressed the wrong button. Chris, you've done well to find the button. Hats off to you. Very quickly, I will tell you what's on today's show. Very quickly, as of last night, me and Fred are going to Kentucky. Yeah, Kentucky. We're going to Kentucky in October. There's an exhibition there called the Utility Expo. Lots of digger-related stuff are going to be there, and yeah, we've got the gig to go and cover it, much as we did with Intermat and Samota and Mine Expo and all of those sort of things. So yes, we're going to we'll have the best part of a week. In fact, it may even be a whole week in Kentucky. Never been to Kentucky before, so looking forward to the fried chicken. For those of the younger generation, KFC, that's Kentucky Fried Chicken. That's what it used to be called. I said that to one of my kids recently, and they looked at me like, Kentucky? What? Yeah. I'm going to KFC. Is that the same? Well, food-wise, yeah, probably. As I said, never been before, so don't know what to expect, but looking forward to it enormously. Go and spend some time. And I've also reached out, and I haven't heard back from them yet, but I will let you know how this one progresses. While we were sort of planning our travel and everything else, it just suddenly occurred to me, we're actually going to Louisville in Kentucky for this Utility Expo. Turns out Link-Belt excavators are actually based in Louisville in Kentucky. So I've dropped them a line and said, look, we're coming over. Would love to come and meet you guys, because Link-Belt is one of those brands, a bit like John Deere, only get to see them at the major American exhibitions. The rest of the time, don't get to interact with them at all. So looking forward to hearing back from them. I'll keep you posted. Anyway, all of that being said, it is Wednesday, the 27th of August. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming. And in today's show, the Volvo A30 electric ADT. Is this the future of hauling? Could be. From Tonka Toys to Big Boys Toys, the digger journey of a Develon customer. Fendt Tractors and K-TEC scrapers, a perfect partnership. And we're going proper old school with the fine folks at Fuchs. Yeah, we are. Plus, in my morning monologue today, divided, distracted, compliant. Yeah. And Andy Thornton correctly points out, been to Louisville, what's it like? It is the land of Muhammad Ali. It is. In actual fact, we're pretty much next door to the museum. I can't remember. Is it dedicated to him or is it named after him? It's one of those. And listen, if you could see the bookshelf behind me, I think there's at least 4 books on Muhammad Ali, one of my absolute idols growing up. Transcended the sport of boxing. So yes, I shall be paying tribute to the Muhammad Ali, the great Cassius Clay, while I'm there. Keep you posted on all of that. Now, I have posted the question of the day, but I'm going to quickly remind you of it before we crack on with the show. So here we go. Yeah, we're still enjoying some decent weather at the moment, but the clock is ticking. Pretty soon we'll be back to dark mornings, jumpers, hats, coats, scraping the ice off the car, scraping the ice off the machines. Yeah, not looking forward to that at all. So, but in preparation for all that, my question of today, or the question of the day for today, is this: what's the worst weather you've ever worked in? Now, personally, I've driven in rain and snow so bad that I've just had to pull over and give up. But probably the most extreme weather occurred during a visit, and I'm only going back maybe 18 months. up to JCB to see their hydrogen prototype machines. We were in a quarry, not their Kevin quarry, another one. It's quite high up. When we arrived, it was already foggy, but the fog just kept rolling in. And at one point, they had a hydrogen-powered telehandler parked 20 yards away, I suppose. And over a period of about 10 minutes, it just vanished. I've looked back at the photographs. I wish I could have found them, actually. The photographs from that day looked like they were shot on an alien planet. It's like somebody has removed all of the background to the world. Amazing stuff. Chris Ford on that very subject. Removing an engine out of a 3C in 1984 in the middle of a clipstone forest in about 1984. Snow and frost all around at night. That sounds like a bundle of laughs. I know my mate Bruce, sadly no longer with us. He actually travelled down to Balmer. We were building, or he was building, should I say, an exhibition stand for Evelyn Barford. It goes to show how long ago it was. And he had been asked to paint the tyres so they were nice and black, make the machine really sort of pop on the exhibition stand, which a lot of exhibitors do. And I got a phone call saying, can't paint the tyres at the moment. Why is that? The paint's frozen. The what now? And he sent me a photograph. And yeah, he was basically lying under the machine, snow all around, and he had a paintbrush in a pot of paint, and he literally picked it up, and it was like a lollipop, like a lolly on a stick. That's how cold it got down at Balmer. I think that was the old Balmer Showground, actually. Can't actually remember. Gary says, is this before or after the 1000th show? It is before. No, it's not. It's after. It's after. The 1000th show is going to fall sometime. Well, where are we now? We are show 987, so another 13. So remainder of this week plus 2 weeks. So whatever that is. So yes, early in September, we will be doing our 1000th show. I'm not going to Kentucky until October. Yeah, but already looking forward to it. Mark Whiting has just turned up as well. Morning, Mark. Another of our Stream Deck crew. Let me see if I can press that. And Dan Cullen has just arrived as well. He's been here, he's gone away, and he's come back again. Morning, Dan. Let me press your button as well. I think we're all now present and correct. Should we crack on? I think we probably should. I'm going to be back in just a moment with a glimpse of what could be the future of on-site hauling after this. Yeah, if you remember rightly, when we were over at Balmer, I brought you a film of a new all-electric Volvo A30 ADT. Fine-looking machine it is, and no more than you'd expect from probably the world leader in all things ADT, Volvo. Problem was, it was stood still. It was on a stand. It looked very smart, all nicely painted, and everything else, but it was standing still. I'm about to show you what it looks like when it's moving about the place. Now, it's a shame that Steve Williamson isn't here. I've seen that machine, but Steve has seen it and heard it when he was up at Eskilstuna a few weeks back. You can imagine. Whisper quiet. You probably only hear the gravel. Steve, if you're out there, if you're not too busy, let us know. What did it look like? What did it perform like? Because I'm fairly sure he's driven it. But more importantly, what did it sound like? Did it sound of anything at all? Let us know. We're going to be back in just a moment with the fine folks at Develon. Hang on a minute. Somebody just popped into the chat. What does that say? Was told they are way underpowered. I don't believe that for a moment. Yeah, listen, you don't become the world leader in all things ADT without knowing your onions. I can't believe that a Volvo would put their name to something that people would criticise for being underpowered. If anyone's had any experience of that, though, please let us know. Yes, we're back in a moment with Develon after this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
So, as a child, this fella was into his Tonka Toys. A few years later, he's playing with the big boys' toys. That's what Tonka Toys can do for you. Proper inspiration. Sit back and enjoy.
I decided to go into the excavation industry, and I've wanted to do it since I was a young age. I used to play with Tonka Toys, and growing up with my father, I'm the second generation doing that, and he trained me since I was young. I've always loved this industry since I was a kid. My name is Vince Lalo, and we own Lalo Pipeline. We're located in Southern Oregon in White City. We've been in business since 1998, so about 25 years now. We do excavation and underground. We do a lot of commercial site development. We put in new city streets, sewer mains, water mains, storm drain, site grading. About 3 years ago, we were doing a project here in Ashland, Oregon. Jason Thomas from Wilson Equipment called me up and wanted to have us demo a DX300 excavator. Once I got on the machine, it didn't take probably 2 minutes, and decided that we wanted to keep it on the job site. The balance of the machine felt really, really good. It was easy to operate and it was smooth. Fine grading, we felt that was pretty nice with that machine. We ended up buying another DX300 loader. We bought a Develon 140, two Develon 225s, and every one of those machines have been excellent for our company. So with the reduced tail swing, we can get into really tight areas around buildings and foundations and that kind of thing, or even out in the street. And with the tilt rotator, we can get to utilities and around foundations a lot easier than a standard operating machine. Before, in the past, we'd have 3 or 4 laborers on the ground to grade and rake, and then a grade checker. And with the tilt rotator, when we fine grade our building slabs or prepping for concrete, sidewalks, that kind of thing, the tilt rotator takes away all the labor. It takes it down just to a grade checker and the machine operator, which has been really handy, especially in the labor shortage.
Busily beavering away in the background there. I do apologise. I had a few messages coming. I thought I'd better sort those out. We've got some of the new Volvo A40 and A45 trucks up here, and I bet they are phenomenal. Gary says they are really smart, powerful looking trucks. Dan Cullen is a fan of Develon. Only one best will do. Yeah, I can't argue with that. I mean, I can't really argue with any of the brands these days. I realise it's quite tempting to point fingers and criticise even some of the Chinese brands. Can you do it really? Can you? Oh, I think most of them these days are absolutely beyond criticism. We're going a little bit old school for the second part of the show this morning. More so in our final film, which is just a few minutes away. But we're going to come back with a bit of scraper action. Not just scrapers, but a bit of tractor as well. Stick around if you like that kind of thing.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Now, Fendt is a big name in tractors. K-TEC is a big name in scrapers. But you put them together and you've got something a little bit special. Enjoy.
We're using the K-TEC 1228s in tandem behind Fendt Tractors, which gives them a maximum capacity of 56 cubic yards. Compared to conventional tire tractors, these tracked Fendt 1167 MT tractors produce 673 horsepower and offer more traction and less slippage when loading in loamy sand. Once these scrapers level off this field they've created, get ready for rows of cabbage, leafy greens, and lettuce to take root. These veggies will soon be hitting your local shelves, bringing a burst of farm fresh goodness straight to your plate.
And anyone that's travelled to America will know just how out of place those veggies will be. Our American cousins, not big on the veggies. They really aren't. But Dan Cullen saying that, some kit, it really is. Yeah, love to go and have a look at that out on site. We've got one final film for you, which is proper old school. Fuchs. Yes, back after this. I literally stumbled across this film about 5 minutes before we were due to go live today. So I very, very quickly pulled it off the interwebs, stuck my own music to it, and I thought I'd bring it to you because, well, it speaks for itself. Now, that's not the one you're supposed to be seeing. Let me see if I can pull up the one that you're supposed to be seeing. Bear with me 1 second. Actually, there's probably a better way to do that. Let me see if I can, because I did put music to it. I'm sure I did. Let's have a look. Is it this one? Yes. Here we go. Let me try this one for size. Oh, come on now. There we are. There we are. My apologies for the confusion there. I obviously pulled up the wrong file. Chris Frog going back to his experiences in 1984. Coldest I've ever been. Couldn't feel my fingers or toes. Even the local gamekeeper turned out to see what all the lights were about. Coldest I've ever been. Coldest I've ever been was probably in New York. 1 February. That was cold. But I do remember there was an incident many, many years ago. First time I ever went to Finland, I think it was. I was in Helsinki. It was winter. But I'd gone prepared, I had the hat, the coat, the scarf, and all the things that went with it. But I came out of my hotel on my way to dinner, and I walked out of my hotel, turned right, and walked across an alleyway, and the wind blew up the alleyway, just like an icy blast. And I heard this sound that went, it was me. It was me. I was making involuntary freezing cold noises. Chris Wald says better than a spade. Top marks for getting it all in the trailer. Yeah, absolutely, more than I could do. And Andy Thornton, as someone who hasn't driven anything bigger than a Luton van, you're now talking about my size. I wonder what it's like. Did those old, lots of cables and winches and stuff, did the cables break much? I can't, I caught the tail end of crawler cranes and stuff like that in a demolition environment. Were you constantly replacing cables, or were they a lot tougher than that? Do you remember cutting my hands to ribbons on one years ago when I was a kid, hanging on to a cable and then letting the recoil of the spool take me up into the air? That was great fun. Till you looked at your hands and they were torn to shreds. Apparently, Ken Hatcher has just said good morning again. I don't know why he said it twice, but he's still got the weather. Morning, Ken, again. Thank you very much indeed for your message. That's about it, I think. Yeah, that's about it for the main part of this morning show. I am going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Hope to see you again very, very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I will be back in just a moment after this. If you keep people exhausted and distracted, they won't organise. If you keep them struggling and divided, they won't resist. The system isn't broken, it's working as designed. I saw those words posted as a rallying cry to fight back against the increasing authoritarianism of the Trump government. It was posted over on the Substack social media platform, where anti-Trump rhetoric is not just widespread, but it's encouraged. Anyone reading those words on Substack would know precisely why it was posted and precisely who and what it was aimed at. But context, as they say, is everything. If I took those words and posted them for a demolition and construction industry audience, those words would still resonate. The intended target would have changed, but anyone reading those words within the demolition and construction sector would instantly relate to the message. Exhausted and distracted. Has any three-word phrase ever summed up the lot of demolition and construction workers better? Early starts, late finishes, and unrelenting pressure for ever greater levels of productivity more than take care of the exhaustion. Meanwhile, concerns over both job and financial security provide the distraction. As a worker, your job and your wages are constantly in doubt, even as your employer's shareholders enjoy another hefty dividend, while your company's middle management jet off on another holiday, or when the CEO visits the site in his factory fresh Bentley. Divided and struggling. A demolition or construction worker might be struggling financially, emotionally, or mentally, but in all likelihood, they're doing so in splendid and strategic isolation. Back in the days of direct employment, it was possible to gauge an overall sense of worker sentiment. Workers might discuss their wages or bemoan the lack of pay increases during a morning break. They might gripe about working conditions over lunch. If things got really bad, they might enlist a union representative to take their concerns to the company management. But today, that workforce is divided. In fact, this is divide and conquer writ large. Many workers are employed through agencies. Any gripes would be directed to the agencies rather than to the employer. That agency workforce is also transient, here today and gone tomorrow. There is no opportunity to experience an employer's working conditions over an extended period. A worker's time with that employer might last for the duration of a single project. It might last for even less than that. And that union representation has all but vanished from UK demolition and construction sites, quite possibly by strategic design. In fact, anyone caught banding about the word union these days will generally find themselves heading for the site exit in pretty short order. In my opinion, there is a line missing from that phrase earlier in the episode. One that again relates to both the current. I'll do that again. In my opinion, there is a line missing from that poster. One that again relates to both the current US political landscape and to the UK demolition and construction industry. Keep people ill-informed so they can't see what's really happening. In the US, any news that doesn't toe the Donald Trump presidential line or that doesn't share his remarkably narrow worldview is derided as fake news. That isn't just political and journalistic bias. That's the strategic removal of the means for independent thought. It's not presenting all the facts, it's presenting purely the facts that those in power want you to see and to hear. And how is that any different from promises of investment in housing and infrastructure that never materialise? How is that different from promising the construction of dozens of new hospitals that never came to fruition, or the promise of a high-speed rail link to connect the nation's capital with the north of the country that was subsequently cut off at the Midlands? How is that any different to plans for tens of thousands of new workers, greater investment in training and the promotion of vocational skills in schools, none of which ever make it off the page of a governmental manifesto? As an industry and as a workforce, we are spoon-fed the information that best suits the needs and ambitions of those in power. Meanwhile, details of massive director wages, shareholder dividends, or impending financial catastrophe are kept under wraps. There are many issues facing the UK demolition and construction industry today. Accidents and fatalities, questionable working conditions, workers under constant pressure and stress, and a lack of job and financial security. All of those issues have remained constant, not just for years, but for decades. So perhaps the final sentence of that poster explains precisely why. If you keep the people exhausted and distracted, they won't organise. If you keep them struggling and divided, they won't resist. The system isn't broken, it's working as designed. There you are. There's my morning monologue for today. How are we all doing? Let me head on over to the chat, see what's occurring over there. Chris Ford, no, it's not. It's Jim Turner. The other year when it was getting on for 40 degrees. Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about extremes of temperature or extreme weather being cold, rain and snow and ice, all of which are bad. But yeah, if it's too hot, yeah. Chris Ford says, just had beans on toast with eggs on top. Didn't know you could get rubber eggs. Have you ever seen I wish I could do a good Mike Reed impression. You've seen Mike Reed talking about that kind of thing. He does a piece about going into, your greasy spoon calf. And the guy comes along to take his order and he says, I want eggs, but I want the eggs to be so rubbery you could bounce them on the floor. I want the bacon to be so crispy that if I put my knife in it, it would shatter like shrapnel and fly across. And I want the beans to be hot on top, cold underneath, and frozen in the middle. And the guy in the calf says, I haven't got time to do that. And Mike Reed says, well, you fucking did yesterday. Yeah, that's there you are. I'll give you 3 better words: work-life balance. Time for a change. Is on that subject, I work-life balance. I'm a firm believer in it, particularly as I've just come back off my holiday, which kind of reset me. Is work-life balance actually achievable in the field of demolition and construction? Now, I realise that we have in our midst people like Jim Turner, for example, who I think would be working on machines whether he was paid to do it or not. I think he drives a digger for a living and then he goes home and does some more of it. I realise we have exceptions, but if you are, if your job is to drive a digger, and I don't mean your vocation, I mean your job. All you're doing is you're going to drive a digger or work within demolition and construction just to pay the wages. It may not have been your career of choice. You're just doing it to drive you to pay the wages, keep a roof over your head, keep food on the table. Is a work-life balance actually achievable in this day and age? I'm not sure it is. I'm not sure it is. When you think about the number of people that are required to work away from home, for one thing, but even if you're not working away from home, Dan Cullen is a prime example. If you're working a fair old distance away, what are you out the house? 4, half 4 in the morning? What time do you get back? 8, half 8, maybe later. I know we were talking to Steve Williamson about this a while ago while he was working up in Scotland. And he was working pretty much an 11, 12-hour day, but there was an hour and a half of travel on either end of it. Steve is only married a couple of years. How much time is he spending with his wife? How much time is he spending at home with I know he takes his dog to work with him, but how much time is he doing that? How much leisure time do you guys actually have? And I'll accept the fact that some of you are that enthusiastic about this job that you are quite happy for your leisure time to be spent in and around. Plant Works is coming up. What is it, 4 weeks away now? I don't know. Some of you will be taking time out to go and have a look around Plant Works. That I would consider that still to be a day off. I think that is redressing the balance, even though it is in the same industry. But how much time do you actually get to yourself? And when in the right job, you don't need a work-life balance. Is that true? And as I say, I preempted what I was saying because I know how you feel about these things, Jim. I realise, as I say, I'm sure you'd go and play with diggers. Same with some of the others. I think Chris would be the same. Dan Cullen would probably be the same. You go and play with diggers, even if you weren't being paid to play with diggers, or you do it at the weekend or whatever it might be. But do you actually have a work-life balance? And when was the last time any of you took a week off? When was the last time you finished at 5 o'clock on a Friday and didn't actually think about work until Monday morning? When was the last time you took yourself off, I don't know, to the cinema or out for dinner with friends or whatever midweek? You know, you're up to your eyes. Can you, even if it's a popping around your mate's house for a cup of coffee or whatever it might be, can you do that? Can you do that, or is the pressure in this industry just so unrelenting that that is not an option? Dan Cullen says leisure time, not a lot. Yeah, yeah, that is my feeling on this. And again, I go back to that post. What does it say? If you keep people exhausted and distracted, they won't organise. You know, if that were part of a grand design from the employers within the demolition and construction industry, they've done it pretty well, haven't they? How could you organise right now? If you keep them struggling and divided, they won't resist. Think about how, I always refer to this notion of taking people off the books and pushing them out into self-employment or employment through agencies. And I always refer to that from a financial standpoint. If you are an employee, a Alpha Beta, they used to employ Wimpies, they used to employ lots of people, but they push them out into self-employment, which means that they can perhaps more readily ride the highs and lows of demand. They don't have to worry about redundancy payments anymore. They just take on less people when they need less people, and they take on more people when they need more people, and they can pick them up and put them down without batting an eyelid. That's the core of it. But there is another side to that, isn't there? If you keep people struggling and divide, they won't resist. Even if, as we said earlier about the news story with this guy that's discovered asbestos and was basically gagged for telling people about it. If you were working on a site, let's say there's 10, 15, 20 of you working on a site, and you discover something, it might be asbestos, it might be a toxin, it might be an accident waiting to happen, it might be the discovery of people on drugs and alcohol, including the hierarchy of the site. What could you do about that? Because if you're an agency worker, basically your ultimate boss is the agency, and you can go back to the agency and say, well, I'm really uncomfortable with where I am. It's not the same as going to a union representative who will speak not just for you, but will speak for your 15 or 20 colleagues at the same time, and possibly speak for the wider workforce. Yours is one site. Let's say there's 20 people on that site, but there might be 50 sites. There could be 1,000 guys working up and down the country, all of which are working under the same regime. There is no scope for you as a 1,000 men and women to say, "Oh, hang on, this needs rectifying. This won't cut it." Divide and conquer. Work-life balance, says Andy Thornton, isn't about doing what you love. It's about family, loved ones, and variety. No one goes to their grave wishing they'd given their employer more time. No, that is very true. That is very true. And again, I mean, I looked at my cruise recently it was a holiday because I haven't spent a great deal of time with my other half, but a digital detox as well. Just going away. I mean, literally, my phone. I think at one point I went 4 days without even switching the thing on. It's really, really quite nice. I mean, you pay for it afterwards. You're inundated with emails and text messages, on WhatsApp messages, and so on. But it is. I do think it's important just to take a bit of a breather. And that's why one of the reasons. I mean, I took myself off to the cricket with my 2 sons recently. Just that idea of going and doing something that isn't work related. I think you need it for your. I think you need it for your physical health, but as much for your mental health as well. Just time to. Okay, I can go again now, and I wonder if there is any real scope for that. Give you an example. My son Fred, and I think he's an extreme example because he's absolutely addicted at the moment, but he is currently playing golf 3, maybe 4 times a week. Now golf is quite demanding, much the same, or demanding on time, much the same as my love of fishing. Very demanding on time. You can't play golf for 20 minutes. You can't go fishing for 20 minutes. It takes you that long to get there, and then you've got to set up, and then you've got to do. So you're looking at maybe half a day, 4 or 5 hours to go and do the thing. Now, if you're in the middle management of a demolition or construction company, not only can you find the time, it's actually encouraged. You are, you're networking. You can go and spend some time on the golf course with people that may or may not be customers or colleagues or whatever it might be. Actually encouraged. If you are a worker, driving a digger or an operative, do you have that same freedom to go and pursue a hobby like that? Could you maintain your golf handicap if you are working at site level? If you are an operative or a digger driver or a banksman or something like that, could you actually find the time to go and do that, to clear your head, to keep your handicap up? These count, Jim. I think these count. I've had a couple of weekends away this year. They were both vintage plant do's. I don't consider that to be the same. I mean, it is a busman's holiday, but it's a holiday nonetheless. I don't think that's a problem. But I'm pleased that you've managed to do a couple of those this year. But out of 52 weeks, you've managed 2 weekends. And listen, I fully appreciate that. I'm an office bod. I'm a clerical lazy git who sits behind a desk in a nice comfy chair, can go and make myself a cup of tea when I feel like it, and would rather work fewer rather than more hours. I realise I'm not necessarily representative of the audience, and I realise that you guys, some of you actually like early starts, late finishes, cold mornings, being surrounded by plant all the live long day. But surely, even those that are most enthusiastic, that most passionate about this industry, every once in a while you need to take a big, deep inhale and, okay, I'm ready to go again. Surely? One for another occasion. Everybody, thank you very much indeed for your input. I am going to be back tomorrow. Where are we now? It's completely thrown me the calendar this week. It is Wednesday today, isn't it? It is Wednesday. So back tomorrow, back on Friday as well for yet more of the same. Just a very quick heads up, and I am going to be putting out a LinkedIn post about this. We are, up until fairly recently, for the last 3 or 4 years, we've been publishing our Demolition Insider newsletter over on LinkedIn on a daily basis. So we effectively take some of the transcription from our morning monologue and put it over there. We're moving away. And just to explain, as I say, I will be putting out a post that explains this further. But I don't actually think that LinkedIn is appropriate for some of the things that we discussed. The issue with LinkedIn, and this is precisely why it's designed, this LinkedIn does what LinkedIn does very, very well. They are designed to expose you to the biggest and the widest possible audience, which is fine. And as I say, they do that job very well. But there are some discussions that I don't want to be broadcast far and wide. There are some messages and conversations and discussions that I would rather keep not under wraps, defeat the object, but keep to a tight community, to the point where over on Substack, which is where we're actually moving Demolition Insider to, I've had a couple of applications in the last couple of weeks for subscriptions. One of which was offering to pay, and I declined it because I didn't want them in our midst. And one of which was free, and I didn't want them. It's my website, and I'm not looking to create editorial bias, but I think some of the conversations that need to be had around this industry should not necessarily involve some of those people that purport to run the industry today. If I don't care, if I want to sit here and criticize the NFDC, for example, I will do so. I will F and Jeff. I will stamp my feet. I'll bang my fists on the table, and I'm okay with that. The problem is that some other people, i.e. those that are on the receiving end of some of that, are not in the same position as me. If you're an employee working within an NFDC member company, are you free to express your views on your employer's membership of that organization? And my belief is not always. So, going back to the crux of that, I'm going to take Demolition Insider and gradually port it over to Substack. Substack is, you can have a free membership over there. I can control who comes in and who doesn't. I can control who sees which messages. It's not broadcast to the masses. So, I mean, rather than broadcasting a single thing to everybody, if I believe it is only applicable to a quarter, a third, half of our readership, I can send it to that quarter, third, or half. I want to be able to, I want to give people basically the freedom to speak freely. So we are, as I say, we're beginning to port over. We've already had a bit of an influx on subscriptions, and just as an example of this, we are the only news outlet, for want of a better term, that has been covering this asbestos industry whistleblower. Nobody else has referred to him. Nobody else has reported on it. Nobody else has commented on it. We have multiple times. And that has actually driven a whole bunch of new subscribers, a lot of them paying for the privilege. You don't have to. You really don't have to. But some have chosen to do that because they support us speaking out and so on. So that's what we're doing. Anyway, that's a cut a long story short. We've done that one. Jim Turner says, I'd get more shooting in if I had more time in winter because I get more time in the dark evenings. Shooting in the dark evenings? That sounds dangerous. If you want to know how well the mine is running, ask those at the coalface. I wish I'd heard that before this morning. That's exactly it. Just taking the demolition element of our audience as an example, there are 130 odd members of the NFDC, most of whom are, the company owners, managing directors, CEOs, whatever it might be. And, they have their little get-togethers, they have their regional meetings and their national meetings. They have their convention in far-flung destinations where they can all sit around in a huddle and chat amongst themselves. But that's 130 of them. There is nowhere for the workers. The UK demolition industry employs somewhere between 25 and 30,000 men and women. There is nowhere for them to have similar conversations, to speak freely about their hopes and fears and aspirations and concerns. There is nowhere for that. That is basically why we call Demolition Insider Demolition Insider. It's not I'm not banning anyone. If somebody is a managing director and they want to read Demolition Insider, knock yourselves out. Some already do. I know we've got quite a few people that are doing that already. But that's not our core audience. Our core audience, in my belief, is those, as Andy Thornton has just described it, those at the coalface. those that really know what's going on. Not those in the ivory towers, but those with the dirt under their fingernails. That's the idea of Demolition Insider. So that's why, basically, cut a long story short, that's why we're taking it away from LinkedIn and moving over to Substack. If you'd like to follow us, you can do that. Fairly sure I've got a button for this. Have I got a button for this? Could have sworn I had one. There you are. If you'd like to follow Demolition Insider, you can do so. Simple as that. It is Demolition Insider .substack.com. Simple as that. Go over there, click the subscribe button. As I say, you can do it free of charge. If anybody wants to pay for it, they can do that, but it's not necessary. Only about 1 in 20 of our posts is ever beyond a paid firewall. You can pick or choose whether you want to see those. And if you have a free membership, you can actually access some of those paid for ones as well. So just to let you know, that's what we're doing. That's all part of the grand plan going forward. We are now just, well, after today, we're 12 shows away from the big 1000th show, which again is going to mark a bit of a transition with the show as well. So keep an eye on that. Andy Thornton, got a meeting. Have a good one, everyone. Hope to see you all tomorrow. Good luck with your meeting, Andy. And yes, I will do the same. I'm going to go off now. Desperate for my 4th cup of tea of the day. Not that desperate, but you get the idea. I'll be back tomorrow if you get more of the same. Till then, everybody, have a fine and splendid day. Look out for your work-life balance, and don't forget, every once in a while, it pays to resist. It does pay to resist. See you tomorrow.